Filling the Void, episode 24, Ben. Yeah, it was put on there as FTV, so it wasn't showing up on YouTube. Everyone got it. Yeah. We are live. That's right, everyone. We are 15 minutes and 19 seconds away from another exciting episode of Filling the Void.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of Filling the Void. I hope your week is going well. I think we should all have our hearts filled with joy and happiness, especially after a wonderful start for the presidential debates. Oh, shit. Sorry, I went there. My bad. Anyway, welcome. I'm very excited about tonight's episode. We're going to give you a preview of some of the table reads that will be happening at the Seattle Film Summit. And we have assembled some of my personal favorite actors, not just in the region, but from around the country. And I'm excited for you to witness some of their talent. But before we dive into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Seattle Film Summit. I think we are officially 1 month away, November 1st to the 22nd. We are giving you 21 days of content, but not only, because we definitely don't want you to be Zoom fatigued. We're not going to make you watch every day. We're going to also give you access for 60 days after November 22nd. So get those pieces that you can here and there. There's certain pieces that you'll have to be live to witness. One of those is the actors showcase. One of those is the filmmaker showcase. Are definitely our networking sessions, and all of our film screenings will be that one time only. But everything else on that schedule you can consume for 60 days afterwards. And we have one thing that's super exciting about our table reads is that 8 of the 11 table reads over those 22 days will have some extremely high profile industry experts there to give feedback. And our regional casting talent agencies will be casting a lot of the table reads. So stay tuned and go to the website, seattlefilmsummit.com. And if you have not registered yet, get it on your radar. All right, without further ado, we are going to be reading a script tonight, a pilot script. And Todd, at your convenience, why don't we bring in the writer? Let's bring in Sean. Cheers to you all. There he is, sir. How you doing, Sean?
Good. How are you?
Welcome to Filling the Void, and thank you for allowing us to read your script online.
Appreciate it. No, thank you for doing it. Absolutely. This is awesome. Thank you.
Is this the first time you've table read a script?
It is.
Very cool.
So definitely a new experience for me.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your creative side and what motivated you to write this script.
Okay. I mean, I've been writing all of my life. My grandmother got me a little journal when I was like 5 and was like, just go to town. And I've been doing it ever since. So I started doing poetry. I wrote a couple novels, wrote a couple screenplays, but the monster side of things has always been a huge passion of mine. I started reading Stephen King when I was like 8 or 9, and then getting into Edgar Allan Poe, and then started getting into some of the classic characters. And the classic monster movies were always just favorites of mine as soon as I found them. And Jekyll and Hyde specifically were always very interesting to me. It was
kind of getting back into things, been teaching and theatrical acting side things. And
all right, Weetus, you are officially the leader of this operation.
Let's go. The Hyde Theory, Season 1, Episode 1, The Soul of Man by Sean O'Dell. Interior, this. Henry rolls his eyes and turns the page of the newspaper. He begins reading.
I've read this story.
Henry looks up from his paper to find General Danvers Carew, early 60s Caucasian, medium height and build, white hair and mustache. Gentle look, but shows the weariness of past battles. Next to him, referencing the front page headlines. Henry looks back at the front page and then back to the general. He stands in a rush to address the general formally. Henry is nervous.
Thank you, sir. It is more overblown than it need be.
Oh, nonsense. You've made quite a name for yourself, Henry. It is something to be proud of.
Again, thank you. So, would you care to join me?
Henry waves an invitation to the general to sit in Gabriel's vacant seat.
No, no, thank you. I'm just on my way out. Muriel and my wife are just finishing up a play at the Royal Victorian.
Ah, well, yes, it is quite a popular event this evening.
Sadly, I was held with work and not able to attend. Sadly, for whom I am not sure.
Well, do you not enjoy art, sir?
Well, enough, but you know, my mind weighs heavy at times and the crowds can be bothersome.
Well, I understand, sir. I hope that nothing dire looms over you. I'm always at your assistance, shall you require.
You're a good boy, Henry.
General Carew shakes Henry's hand and then begins to move toward the door.
Hey, look, we're having guests for dinner tomorrow night, and I'm certain Muriel would like to see you there.
Henry begins to relay his acceptance, but the general is out of the room. Henry smirks to himself. Fade out. Cut to Henry asleep on a black background. His face contorts as if he is having a nightmare. Henry frightening in a group of men in a bar. Henry punches a man in the face and blood spews from his mouth. Back to Henry stirring. Jump cut to Henry making love with Muriel Carew, early 30s, Caucasian, medium height and build, beautiful with flowing brown hair. It is slow and passionate. Back to Henry stirring. Jump cut to Henry shaking hands with a man in front of the Oxford University with a party of reporters taking pictures. Jump cut to multiple newspapers being dropped in a lab table. Headlines all read messages of scandal for Henry. Back to Henry stirring. Jump cut to Henry sitting at a table with Muriel at a fancy party. Another man offers his hand to Muriel without a word. Muriel looks at Henry and then takes the man's hand. Muriel and the man begin to dance while Henry looks on. The man's hand slowly starts to lower from Muriel's back, getting closer to her buttocks. Henry looks from the man's hand to his eyes and sees the man is staring at Henry. Back to Henry stirring. Back to the party, and Henry is on top of the man, punching him wildly. Jump cut to a silhouette of Mr. Hyde, over 7 feet tall, massive build, roaring in rage, and his large frame is taut and flexed while roaring toward the sky. Back to Henry and his eyes shoot open. He takes a couple of deep breaths. Cut to interior Oxford Science Department, laboratory and office of Henry JEKYLL and HASTIE LANYON. Early morning. Henry sits at a lab table. The room is poorly lit, with only a single candle sitting near the microscope on his lab table. He is tired and appears to have been there for quite some time. He is writing in his notebook and then looks into the microscope. Jump cut to view of blood cells as seen through the microscope. Back to Henry looks away from the microscope and writes in his notebook. He then uses a syringe to remove liquid from a beaker sitting next to the microscope. He looks briefly into the microscope once more and takes a deep breath. He drops a drop from the syringe into the blood sample under the microscope and quickly goes back to looking into the lens. Back to view of blood cells as seen through the microscope, but another particle is present and begins to absorb the blood cells. You can hear Henry's breath catch in anticipation. After a moment, the cells begin to discolor and separate again. Back to Henry pulls away from the microscope in frustration.
Right.
Henry writes in his notebook. As he is writing, the door of the lab opens and HASTIE LANYON, mid-30s, Caucasian, tall, thinner build, blonde hair, fairly good looking, enters the lab. He flips a light switch and lights turn on, blinding Henry.
Turn them off.
I will not. I've told you time and time again not to put the lights off. It will injure your eyes.
The only thing hurting my eyes is your constant pattern of turning the lights on without warning.
Good morning, Henry. I am turning the lights on so you don't go blind.
HASTIE walks to the other side of the lab and places his briefcase on the desk that sits across from Henry's. HASTIE finally turns to Henry.
Honestly, Henry, you're the biologist. I'm the chemist. Shouldn't you be having these conversations with me?
I'm a chemist too.
Yes, but I'm better at it.
Which is why I have asked you to join me on this discovery and share my office, both of which I regret more and more with every blinding moment. And you're late.
No, you're early. Just because you can't sleep doesn't mean none of us should. Some would say that you would even do your best work on good night's rest. Not the writers at the Telegraph, obviously, but most.
Henry laughs and Hasty drops the newspaper, the same edition Henry had the night before on the lab table.
Hasty, when I did the interview, I always spoke of our accomplishments together. I told them we were a team. I don't know why they didn't put you in the headline.
They didn't even talk about our work, not even the breakthroughs we have made in the pathogen analysis. Did you talk at all about our research?
I did. I'm sure it went over their heads. I mean, please don't take offense.
Oh, I don't. Just a bit of fun. You may be pretty one, maybe the pretty one everyone wants to talk to, but they all know I'm the smart one.
So if you're so smart, why can't we get this right? You know, it didn't work again.
Henry positions the microscope towards Hasty. Hasty speaks as he looks down into the microscope.
I told you it wasn't going to work, Henry. I told you I would help you, but I also told you that you were insane. All I ask now is that you don't get your hopes up too high, old boy.
Henry hangs his head for a moment and then looks at Hasty and speaks in a softer tone.
How long have we known each other, Hasty?
Age 6.
And have you ever known me to let my hopes outweigh my abilities?
Never, but they often outweigh reason.
Henry perks back up.
And that's why we always succeed. Where were you last night? Gabriel and I waited for ages at the Athenaeum.
Apologies, I attended an opening at the Victorian with Susan Watterson.
Henry laughs surprisingly, and Hasty looks at him confused.
You may have some competition with that one. I laugh because Gabriel went to bed alone last night.
Does he fancy her?
Well, he left the club last night in an attempt to see her after the play.
In most cases, I would have used my chair and whip to fend him off, but in this regard, I dare say he can have her.
Really? I have never known you to show weakness toward Gabriel in his pursuits. At last tally, you may even best him by a notch or two.
Oh, I show weakness not to him, but her. She is quite the spirited one, a perfect pairing, in fact, the two of them.
So will you not tell him then?
Of Susan and I? Of course I will. I would hate for him to feel that he doesn't have to earn it.
And he destines me a failure. Hasty, I have done it. In my search for good and evil, I merely had to look across my desk.
Exterior cafe down from the university, day. JEKYLL sits on a bench writing in his notebook. Hasty and Gabriel are approaching him, but he continues to write. The end of their conversation becomes clear as they get closer.
Last night.
Yes?
And you were with her all night.
Well,
Henry,
I can tell you that he slept very well last night and came in late this morning.
Henry looks up from his book to the two men.
Did you enjoy your little walk, gentlemen?
And you knew about this.
Only this morning, my honor.
Henry stands and walks towards the entrance of the cafe. Gabriel turns to Hasty and pauses for a moment, then speaks.
All night?
Hasty chuckles. Henry opens the book to the cafe, and Gabriel enters.
Do you sleep together?
Of course not.
Henry laughs and places his hand on Hasty's shoulder as they both enter the cafe.
True evil.
Interior cafe day. Henry, Hasty, and Gabriel sit at the table. Henry's notebook sits on the table next to his cup. A waitress approaches the table.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. What can I offer you today?
Coffee, please.
Hasty and Gabriel speak while still looking at their menus.
3, please.
Hasty looks up at his menu to the waitress.
Can I get a biscuit as well?
Hasty turns to Gabriel.
I have to keep my strength up for tonight, you know.
Oh,
Will there be anything else?
no, thank you.
The waitress smiles and begins to walk away, but keeps her gaze longingly on Henry.
Oh, Henry, I do apologize, but I forgot to tell you. I ran into Muriel and her mother at the Victorian last night. They invited me to dinner at their estate tonight, and she told me that I should make every attempt to pry you out of the lab.
Not a problem, Hasty. I received an invitation from the general at the club last night.
Really? From old dad himself, huh?
Yes, I do quite think he likes me, though it is difficult to tell sometimes.
The fact that he will let you in the door at all is approval enough. When I tried to call after Muriel, he let loose the dogs.
Given that he no longer fears any expectations for his daughter, I may be able to have you invited if you would like to come tonight.
Very fond of you, Henry, but I'm afraid I must decline. I will be escorting Miss Evelyn Chambers to the Victorian this evening.
And what of Susan?
Enjoy her, my friend. And make sure you take explicitly detailed notes to report back later.
Actually, I'll be in the company of Miss Virginia Stevenson this evening.
You fiend! To treat poor Susan Watterson in such a way on a night that I have a date. You should be ashamed of yourself.
The show should be done before 9. Surely you can comfort Susan through these trying times after you have finished with Evelyn.
By God, I think you're right. I can meet Susan at 11 and make her forget all about you.
I told you the show closes before 9.
I know, but Evelyn doesn't.
Gabriel and Hasty laugh. They look over to see Henry writing in his notebook.
Henry, will you please pay attention?
You are bringing Evelyn to the Victorian. Hasty is bringing Virginia Stevenson to Muriel's dinner tonight rather than Susan, and you plan to defile both Susan and Evelyn before the evening is out to ensure every father carries your name in infamy across the land. Have I missed anything?
No, you did quite well, old boy.
Henry smiles while still taking his notes.
I presume, based on your lack of interest in the world around you, that we will be needing to bring our suits to the lab again.
It would be prudent.
The waitress approaches and places the coffees and biscuits onto the table. She then puts Henry's cup in front of him. He looks up at her.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Gabrielle notices that the waitress does not take her gaze from Henry as she walks away.
I think she has a bit of a flair for you.
Oh, Susan?
Oh, not Susan, you ninny, the waitress.
Ah.
Removed your sight from the book for a moment, you would see that someone as smart and handsome as you and me would have their pick. Muriel's great, Henry, but unless you're going to marry the girl, you should start playing the field a bit more.
I am.
Thank God. It'll be just like the old days, the three of us out there on the hunt, breaking hearts.
No, Gabriel, no. Tonight, I'm going to ask the general for Muriel's hand. So.
Well, I was only joking, old boy. Don't you think you're too young to be vowing yourself to one woman for the rest of your life?
Would you prefer I call upon Susan Watterson instead?
Hasty laughs and chokes on a sip of coffee. Gabrielle contemplated for a moment.
Congratulations to the happy couple.
Are you sure now is the proper time, Henry? To Gabriel's point, our work has taken a large portion of your view as of late.
It has. I'm not blind to it, but I think now is the right time. I'm confident that we will succeed, and when we do, I would like her by my side.
Then you have my deepest hopes, my friend. May the general see you as we all do, and know that Muriel would be lucky to have you.
You're not going to propose at the dinner, are you? I'd hate to miss it.
And hate to miss an Evelyn and Susan marathon event.
Precisely.
No, that will be for another evening.
Good man. Oh, and as congratulations, coffee is on me.
Thank you, Gabriel. Do you mind if I excuse myself back to the lab? There are more tests I would like to run before dinner.
May you find that which you seek, and may you find it soon, so that we can get your nose out of that wretched book. Off you go, old boy.
Henry smiles and turns to Hasty, wanting Hasty to hurry back to the lab as well, but Hasty speaks before Henry can.
I'll be to the lab after I pick up our suits.
Henry's confused for a moment, and then realization sets in.
Thank you, Hasty. I would not survive without you.
Remember that tonight, when you are flattering me to Virginia, Stevenson.
Henry chuckles as he exits the cafe. The waitress hurries to the table and is sad to see that Henry has left. Gabrielle hands the waitress money.
Here you are, dear, and you can keep the rest for your beauty and service.
Thank you, sir.
The waitress clears the table and walks away.
Do you think she would settle for someone of lesser intelligence, but profoundly more handsome?
Perhaps, but I already have a date tonight.
Interior, Oxford Science Department, laboratory and office of Henry JEKYLL and HASTIE LANYON, afternoon. Henry sits at his desk, taking notes on his notebook. He puts the notebook down and looks at a couple of papers on his desk. He places those down and stands. He crosses the room to the lab station. He takes a blood sample slide from a small box and places it under the microscope. He looks into the microscope briefly and then pulls back and writes in his notebook. The office door opens and HASTIE enters carrying 2 suit bags.
I see you have learned to operate the lights. Amazing invention, is it not? Perhaps we should write a letter to the Edison and congratulate him?
Henry chuckles. HASTIE hangs 1 suit bag on the coat hook behind his desk. He lays Henry's suit across Henry's desk.
Where did this blood come from?
HASTIE looks comically from across the room and inhales deeply as if smelling something.
I believe based on the smell that you are at the tail end of the hog supply.
Can we not keep a constant variable? I don't want it to affect the results.
Oh, come now, Henry. I'm sure blood is in short supply at the university.
There are already too many variables. We must remain constant.
I will send in an acquisition form in the morning. What would you prefer, a pig, horse, cow, perhaps that of chemist in the prime of his life, waiting to go to a party, but stuck in the laboratory?
I'm afraid those samples have rotted.
Oh, you're quite right.
HASTIE looks down at the box and back up at Henry.
And this is rat, by the way.
HASTIE smiles and moves around Henry to the other side of the table in front of a chemistry seat.
You are shameless.
No, Gabriel is shameless. Excuse me. No, Gabriel is shameless. I am hapless, and you are hopeless.
Well, don't we make quite the team then?
We do indeed.
Dissolve to an overview of the office. Henry and HASTIE begin to fade in and out as if they are completing tasks to show a time lapse. Back to the laboratory with Henry at his desk and HASTIE in front of the chemistry set.
No, I think we should use arsenic again. I know you don't agree, but it does hold medical benefits in small doses.
Yes, Henry, in small doses. In the levels that we would need to use it would kill in moments.
But if we utilize its small doses, just in the testing phase, we can replicate those reactions with a less invasive alternative.
Like snake venom?
Henry looks at HASTIE with a brooding face and as acceptance of his sarcasm. HASTIE removes his watch from his pocket and checks the time.
Damn it. I must go before I am late to pick up Virginia.
HASTIE stands and moves towards his desk. He takes a stack of papers from his desk and places them in his briefcase. He closes the notebook on his desk. He then picks up his briefcase and takes his suit bag from the hook behind his desk.
You better start getting ready as well. I don't think Muriel will be too fond of you if you are late.
HASTIE begins to move toward the door and Henry looks down at his notebook. Henry looks up quickly to HASTIE.
Did you finish the last few compounds I asked you for?
HASTIE stops at the door and looks back at Henry exasperated. He takes a moment to answer, weighing the outcome to his response.
They're on the table.
Thank you.
HASTIE speaks as he walks out the door.
I will stall for you as long as I can.
Yes, yes, yes.
The door closes. Henry's gaze is already back into his notebook. He appears not to have heard HASTIE. Jump cut to Henry at the lab desk stirring a compound in a beaker. The room is noticeably darker than before. The sun has set through the windows. He takes a syringe and removes some of the liquid. He looks into the microscope for a moment with the syringe still in hand and then drops a droplet of the liquid into the blood slide under the microscope. Henry puts the syringe on the table and looks into the microscope. Jump cut to a view of blood cells is seen through the microscope. But another particle is present and begins to absorb the blood cells. You can hear Henry's breath catch in anticipation. After a moment, the cells begin to discolor, a different color than before, and separate again. Back to Henry looking into the microscope.
Oh, no, no. Damn it.
Henry looks up from the microscope and stares at it for a moment, and then speaks matter-of-factly.
Arsenic.
Henry stands from the lab table and walks across the room to his desk. He lifts a few papers as if looking for something. He lifts a book. He lifts his suit bag. He examines the desktop for an item. He pauses. He looks at the suit bag for a moment and then puts his head back in frustration.
God, I shall never hear the end of this.
Henry drops the papers and book back onto the desk and rushes to the door. He flips the lights off in his way out. Cut 2. Exterior CAREW Estate Driveway night. CAREW Estate Driveway night. Multiple carriages line a large roundabout driveway. The drivers are standing in a group around a fountain that sits in the middle of talking and waiting for the end of the party. A single carriage can be seen coming up the drive. When the drivers see this, they hurry back to their respective carriages in a rush. The entering carriage turns to place the carriage door toward the front door of the mansion. The driver, Thomas, 12 years old, Caucasian, medium height with a thin build, appears sickly but recovering, jumps down quickly and opens the door. Henry quickly climbs out of the carriage in full tuxedo.
I'm sorry, sir. I drove as fast as I could.
You did quite well. Thank you, Thomas. This tardiness is of my own making.
Please, sir, blame me when you get in there. Tell him I tossed a wheel. Tell him I was sick.
I would never dream of it, Thomas. Besides, you would need your reputation when these elitists cast me out, and you're in need of a new fare.
Your rides will always be on the house, sir.
Henry smiles and pats Thomas on the shoulder again. Henry moves toward the door as Thomas jumps back into the driver's seat and moves the carriage to its holding spot. Cut 2, interior, CAREW mansion, greeting room, night. The CAREW family butler, Philip, mid-50s, African-British, opens the large front door and Henry steps inside. Philip closes the door behind him.
Good evening, sir. Another late night? May I take your jacket?
Yes, Philip. I believe I have made quite the blunder again.
I can forget to announce you, sir, if that is your wish. Perhaps you can just disappear into the crowd.
That sounds like a splendid idea, Philip. Thank you. I would assume this has become less of a dinner and more of a party?
Oh, you're quite right there, sir. I know I would not like to have this many mouths to feed around my dinner table.
Thank you, Philip.
Of course, sir.
Henry walks to the open ballroom door and peeks into the room without entering. Jump cut 2. Henry's view of the ballroom. After a moment of surveying the room, he sees Hastie standing toward the back of the room, talking with Virginia Stevenson, mid-30s, tall, thin build, but very pretty. He does another scan of the room. Jump cut 2. Henry entering the ballroom. He quickly makes his way around a couple of groups and reaches Hastie. As he approaches, Hastie sees him and opens his watch.
I believe this may be a personal record, oh boy.
I know. I got distracted. Virginia, you look lovely this evening.
Thank you, Henry. You look quite dashing as well.
She's not happy.
Oh, no. She was quite agitated.
Well, I'm glad that you're both getting an evening's worth of entertainment from my misery. Have you seen her recently, by the way?
Oh, yes. She's around. In fact, she is right.
I'm right here.
Henry closes his eyes as if he is accepting his fate. He takes a deep breath and turns around. Muriel is standing behind him with a glass of champagne. She is glaring at Henry, but has a hint of a smile on her lips.
You're late.
I know.
Hastie and Virginia have been here for over an hour.
I know.
I bought a new dress for this.
Henry looks down and admires her dress and her beauty.
I know.
You look very handsome.
I know.
Hero smiles, steps in, and kisses Henry on the cheek, as close to his lips as she can get. She steps back.
You look beautiful, Muriel. The dress perfectly reflects the green from your eyes, and I would willingly and thankfully get lost in them for all time. I'm so sorry.
Muriel
Don't do that, Henry. It makes it simply impossible to stay mad at you.
Muriel hands Henry her glass of champagne. He takes a sip, never breaking eye contact with her. Jump cut to later in the party, still in the ballroom. Hastie, Virginia, Henry, and Muriel are talking. General CAREW approaches their group with Baron John Saville, early 40s Caucasian, tall, medium build, reddish hair with a large mustache, fairly handsome but rat-faced.
Muriel, I wanted to.
The general notices that Henry is in the group.
Henry, I didn't hear Philip announce your entry. I would like to introduce you all to Lord Jonathan Saville, 2nd Baron of Rufford.
Henry sticks out his hand to shake Saville. Saville passes by Henry's hand without breaking eye contact with Muriel and takes her hand instead. He lifts it and kisses the back of it. Good evening, Miss CAREW. Your father has told me so much about you, but he neglected to mention your beauty. Hastie makes an indignant face at Henry as if to say, this guy is too much. Henry shrugs slightly.
Well, thank you, Lord. You flatter me.
She takes her hand from his grip with poise, but wishes to break his hold on her.
May I introduce you to Miss Virginia Stevenson, whom often volunteers with me at the clinics of the East End, and to Doctors HASTIE, LANYON, and Henry JEKYLL of Oxford University.
Saville looks among the group passingly. Pleasure to meet all of you.
Henry also volunteers at the clinics and is working on a fantastic serum to cure blood-borne diseases and illnesses with Mr. Lanyon at the university.
And we are exploring the possibilities of what may reside in the blood of man.
That sounds absolutely dreadful. To have to work day and night around such a gruesome environment.
We tend to leave the buckets out back.
The group laugh. Henry breaks his gaze and shifts his view to the Baron, who is still completely focused on Muriel.
My lord, what brings you to London?
Saville does not answer, keeping his eyes on Muriel. She looks at him and begins to squirm slightly under his gaze.
The Baron just retired from the Foreign Office.
Is that so? I absolutely love to travel. Muriel, darling, didn't you just say you wanted to travel to America?
Muriel turns fully to Virginia to escape the leering of Saville.
Oh, yes. I would love to travel to New York. They have become a leader of fashion and invention. Perhaps it is something in the water that I would love to sample.
New York is lovely in the spring. Luckily, in my travels, there's nowhere in the world that has yet evaded me.
I'm sure it is a sight to behold, but Muriel, I will have to have a very long talk before I will be approving of any other sort of overseas travels. Come, my lord, there are many yet to introduce you to.
Saville takes Muriel's hand again and kisses it. It was my pleasure to meet you, my lady.
Pleasure was mine, my lord.
Muriel bowed slightly and pulled her hand from Saville's. Henry recognizes her discomfort and places himself between Muriel and Saville smoothly.
It was an honor to meet you, my lord.
Henry then turns his attention to the general.
And thank you for the invitation this evening, Sir CAREW.
I'm glad you could make it, Henry.
If you have a moment this evening, I would love to discuss a matter of importance with you.
Oh, of course. I will have Philip locate you before I retire. Enjoy the party, everyone.
General CAREW and Saville walk to another area of the room.
Muriel, why do people only formally address your father at parties?
Henry chuckles a bit. Muriel looks at him disapprovingly, gently slaps him in the stomach, and then looks to Virginia.
He was knighted 2 years ago. He has been in the military services since before I was born. It was a great honor for him, but I think the formality of it all makes him a bit uncomfortable, really. He embraces the title very respectfully in public, but in private, he has always preferred general over sir.
Oh, to have the problems of a knight. I'm sure that is a hellish existence.
Stop it, you lot, before I rescind your invitation and Virginia and I find 2 more suitable gentlemen to escort us for the remainder of the evening.
Oh, I am sure we can find much more than a gentleman.
You know I have the utmost respect and honor for your father.
Loves you, Henry. I have never seen him more fond of someone than that wasn't in uniform.
Well, now I know how to get his full approval then.
Don't you dare. There are more ways to save the world than to raise a gun, Dr. Jekyll.
Best ways, some may say.
Some may.
The soft but shrill sound of metal and crystal fills the ballroom. The crowd looks in the direction of the noise. Philip is standing next to General CAREW in a few steps up the staircase to be seen by everyone. Philip is holding a crystal glass and a fork. The general speaks loudly for the room to hear him.
I would like to thank all of you for coming. Philip has just informed me that dinner will begin shortly, and we should begin making our way to the dining room.
The crowd in the ballroom begins to move slowly toward the large doors leading to the dining room. Henry begins to move in that direction, and his arm is grabbed from behind him. He turns to see Hastie with the grave expression returned to his face. Hastie breaks eye contact momentarily, and his demeanor completely changes when he addresses Virginia.
Virginia, Muriel, please save us a seat. Henry and I will be right in. But we need to discuss something of some urgency.
Virginia is puzzled but accepts the situation quickly.
Don't be long.
This better not pertain to work or any other foolishness.
Of course not. Who has ever known me to play the fool?
Muriel rolls her eyes and walks with Virginia toward the dining room. They are the last to exit, and now Hastie and Henry are alone in the ballroom. Henry turns toward the door to make sure everyone has exited, and then turns back to Hastie quickly.
Look, I was going to tell you.
Tell me what exactly? That my work for the last 6 months has been a lie? That I was brought into one of the most prestigious laboratories in the world to complete a task that I knew nothing about? That one of my oldest friends lied to me for his own personal escapade into madness? Why don't you tell me now? Why don't you tell me what the hell is going on? Don't do that. You look at me in the eye and tell me what I have been doing.
Henry opens his eyes and looks sorrowfully at Hastie.
I didn't lie to you. Well, I did, but not about my theory and not about our work.
What does that mean?
I lied to them.
Hastie's shoulders drop from an angry tension to a drooping realization and disappointment.
I knew that we would never get granted funding for healing or even the search of a man's soul. I told the department that we were exploring pathogens in an attempt to cure blood-borne illnesses. That's all.
And that is why the article in the Telegraph did not mention our work. Because you did not discuss it in order to maintain your lie.
Yes.
But why lie to me, Henry? I've always stood by your side.
I know, Hastie. That made this the hardest part of all. On our journey to eradicate evil, I could not ask you to share in my sin.
Not knowingly, you mean? Does Muriel know?
No. The general sits on the board of governors for the university hospital. She would never lie to her father, and he can never know.
Of course. We couldn't have the lies come back to haunt us, could we?
Hastie, everything that I have promised to the university, we will deliver. Some we have already. Our advancements in pathogen analysis are already being discussed as a future standard of medicine. And if I'm right, there is no telling what more could wait beyond the horizon.
If you are right, I think it is time for you to stop, oh boy, and contemplate for a moment. What if the great Dr. Jekyll is wrong?
Henry's eyes drop again in regret and sadness. Hastie begins to walk slowly to the door and stops alongside Henry.
I will be in tomorrow to collect things from your office.
Hastie walks to the dining room. Cut to interior CAREW mansion dining room night. An incredibly long table sits in the middle of a room, almost comparable in size to the ballroom. Servers line the walls with platters of food for the guests. The table is full, save 2 seats separated by Virginia Stevenson. Hastie enters the room and walks to the chair on Virginia's right, leaving a chair between Virginia and Muriel. He sits and pats Virginia on the hand.
Muriel thought it best to separate you two. That way you won't be encouraged to talk amongst yourselves all night.
Perhaps that is for the best.
Is everything all right? You should try the soup. It may be the most delicious thing I have ever eaten.
Of course, it looks incredible. And have I told you how beautiful you look tonight?
You have, but I will not tire of hearing it again.
Hasty smiles at Virginia and then lifts his spoon to try his soup. Henry approaches the table and sits in the seat between Virginia and Muriel. Muriel immediately recognized Henry's expression of sorrow.
Henry, what is it?
It's nothing. It's just an unfortunate outcome to an experiment.
I was afraid that you were not coming back.
I am sorry, Muriel. I know that I have not been myself as of late. I was just so sure we had something.
Do you love me?
More than words could speak, actions could show, or a sleep could dream.
Muriel smiles widely, caught off guard for a moment, and then regains her composure.
Henry, but the man that I know, the man I fell in love with, has never given up on anything in his life. Obstacles are an unfortunate fact of life, my love, but the men and women that change the world are those that triumph those obstacles and continue their journey. And when your journey is done, I will be right here by your side, and I will be proud to say that I know the great Dr. JEKYLL.
Henry lifts Muriel's hand slowly to his lips. He kisses the back of her hand and lingers there for a beat longer than he would normally, taking in her sweet scent and loving warmth.
Heat up your soup before it gets cold.
Henry smiles and puts Muriel's hand down in its place, resting on the table. He grabs his spoon and lifts his gaze and pauses momentarily in a sudden shock. He sees Baron SAVILE staring at him with a look of intense loathing on his face. Henry lingers for a moment and then looks towards his soup to break their locked eyes. Cut to interior CAREW mansion, greeting room, night. A large crowd is filing out of the front door. General CAREW and his wife are thanking each that passes for coming. Philip and Isaac, late teens, Caucasian, medium height with a thin build, a young butler that Philip has taken as his protege, are helping others into their coats as they pass toward the doorway. Virginia and Hastie are at the back of the crowd with Muriel and Henry to the side.
Are you sure you can't stay for coffee? I hate for the evening to end.
I must be going. Mother and father are coming in from the island tomorrow, and there is still so much to do before they arrive.
And what sort of gentleman would I be if I did not escort Miss Stevenson safely home?
The sort that is sure not to get a second date.
You both have a lovely evening. I look forward to doing this again soon.
Virginia.
Henry bows to her, takes her hand, and kisses it respectfully.
It is always a pleasure to see you. And I will see you tomorrow, old boy.
Yes, tomorrow.
Virginia and Hastie exit the house. Henry and Muriel enter the ballroom where a few tables have been set up with coffee and small cakes for the remaining guests. They choose a table to the very side of the room and sit. Henry takes Muriel's hand, but before a word can be spoken, they are interrupted. Miss CAREW, I am so happy to see that you've decided to rejoin the party. I was quite hoping to discuss your clinic work with you if your friend will excuse us. Muriel is flustered and worried for a moment that Henry will walk away. She looks to Henry and he gives her a very clear look that he is not going anywhere.
My lord, Dr. JEKYLL is the leading scientist of medicine at Oxford and also volunteers at the clinics. I think his insight to our discussion would be of great value.
SAVILE looks at Henry with a disappointed look. Of course, I would welcome his expertise. SAVILE walks around the table to sit on Muriel's other side rather than next to Henry. He sits, leering at Henry. When he is in place in his chair, he turns his full attention to Muriel and his demeanor changes immediately to adoration. You must tell me about your experience in the clinics. Muriel looks again to Henry.
It's quite ghastly, really.
She turns back to SAVILE.
It is a constant battle between smallpox and typhus. Just when we think we have one managed, the other appears again. That's why Henry's work is so important. He's researching blood-borne illnesses so that we can finally find a lasting cure. I know it may turn the stomachs of some men. It may be the most important thing that anyone has ever done. He will help thousands, perhaps millions of people, even long after we have all gone to our graves.
Quite the accomplishment. How close are you to completing this cure of the ages? Henry squirms very slightly in his seat.
We have made a couple of breakthroughs in the field of pathogen analysis, but still far from completion.
SAVILE smiles at JEKYLL's perceived failure. Unfortunate. Perhaps I can help. I can supply unlimited research funding. I even have a local doctor that I can retain to aid in your heavy research load. Dr. Richard Enfield. Do you know of him? He is the top of his field and often retained by Scotland Yard for assistance.
I have heard of him. I understand he is a fine researcher, but Dr. Lanyon is all that I require, and the university is funding my research. But thank you for your interest, my lord.
General CAREW approaches the table. General CAREW approaches the table. General CAREW?
Go for it. You go for it.
Okay. Lord SAVILE, I was hoping that you could join me at my table to expand on the details of the children's wing we discussed earlier. SAVILE rips his gaze from Henry. Of course. I'm going to fund children's wing for the university hospital, Miss CAREW. I would be delighted to hear more of your involvement in the clinic sometime. Perhaps over lunch one afternoon, I can tell you the details of the children we will be saving as well.
Perhaps. Good evening, my lord.
Good evening, Miss CAREW. SAVILE takes her hand again and kisses it with more force than necessary. He leaves the table without acknowledging Henry any further. Muriel turns her attention to Henry.
Henry, he may make me uncomfortable, but his offer was very generous. If you accepted, there would be no end to what you could accomplish.
The university has agreed to provide us with anything we need. While their wealth may not be as limitless as Baron Savile's, they have yet to go against their word. And besides, there are some men that will see you indebted for life, or you indebted even for a moment. I have a feeling that Baron SAVILE is not a man to be indebted to.
SAVILE looks back in Henry's direction. A small sneer forms on SAVILE's face. Jump cut to Henry and Muriel sit in the ballroom conversing. Many guests have left. Philip approaches their table.
Dr. Master CAREW has sent me to inform you that he is in his study awaiting your discussion. Shall I escort you, if you are available?
Muriel looked around the ballroom nervously.
He left a short while ago. I believe he was being overtaken by your mother's urging for the children of London. No need to worry.
Relief spreads across Muriel's face and instantly.
Take him away, Philip. I shall look in on Mother before she retires and thank her. But please bring him back to me before he leaves. I shall see you out.
Cut to interior CAREW estate. General CAREW's private study, night. Philip opens the door and allows Henry to enter. He closes the door behind Henry. Henry looks around the room in awe. The room's decor is matched only by Buckingham Palace. Commendations, awards, hunting trophies, and exotic gifts line the walls. Henry looks to the far end of the room and sees General CAREW sitting in a stocky, leathery chair next to the fireplace. He crosses the room and stops short of his destination. Henry clears his throat to get the general's attention.
General.
Oh, great. Please sit down.
General CAREW motions toward the identical chair that sits across from the fire.
Thank you, sir.
Henry sits.
I was just going over your latest report to the university. I am quite pleased that progress has been made.
Yes, sir. I'm very hopeful that a breakthrough is imminent.
It appears so.
My deepest apologies for my subterfuge, sir, but it is another matter of which I wish to discuss.
What's on your mind, my boy?
Henry pauses to find the proper words to move forward. The general smiles.
Henry, this conversation has been rehearsed and executed for hundreds of years. Wouldn't you agree it is about time to let go of formalities? Just ask, my boy.
I wish for your blessing to ask for Muriel's hand.
General Carew nods. He looks toward the fire for a moment and then back at Henry.
Henry, I have lived a life, some would say, full enough to account for that of 10 lives. Through those years, I have had many revelations, but two weigh heavily on me this evening. The first being that with these vast, glorious experiences, I would give them all over willingly for Muriel's happiness.
Henry smiles in respect for the general's love for his daughter.
The second being that I have learned to recognize a man that is already betrothed. Your work will change the world, Henry, but your devotion can only be focused on one.
I understand, sir, and I respect your decision. I don't know what the future brings in my work. I can only hope to live up to the faith everyone has bestowed upon me, but no matter what end this journey has, it will still only be my second love. My future is as meaningless as my present without Muriel. I hope one day that shows to you.
Then when the time is right, and I am sure you will recognize it, you have my blessing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Fade out. Cut to exterior Carew estate driveway night. All carriages are gone except Thomas with Henry's carriage. The carriage sits in front of the mansion to the side of the stairs leading to the door. The main doors open and Muriel exits the house with Henry. When Thomas sees them, he pulls the carriage forward to meet them at the bottom of the stairs. He jumps down from the driver's seat and stands by the carriage door waiting to open it.
Thank you for coming tonight, Henry.
I only wish I had been here sooner.
You stayed late, so I cannot hold it against you. But sweet flowers with an even sweeter card go a long way to complete forgiveness.
Muriel looks at Henry coyly from her bribe.
What then flowers you shall have.
Should I inform Hasty instead? He may actually remember in the morning.
No, I shall head there straight away to tell him myself.
Thomas, you look well. I'm so happy.
Well, thanks to you, miss.
They reach the carriage and Thomas opens the door.
You do look beautiful tonight, Muriel.
Thank you. You do as well.
Henry smiles. Thomas smiles behind him as well. She kisses Henry on the lips. When she pulls away, Henry is dazed momentarily.
You should go. It's starting to get cold.
Oh, I shall never be cold again.
No. But Thomas may, so hurry home.
Thomas rolls his eyes as if she is worrying too much about him. Henry kisses the back of Muriel's hand softly and enters the carriage. Thomas closes the door and turns to climb into the driver's seat.
Thomas.
Thomas stops and turns quickly as if he has done something wrong and speaks in such a tone.
Yes, miss?
Are you keeping warm?
Yes, miss.
Your immunities are still weak and will be so for a long time. I do not want to see you back in the clinic. If I do, there will be hell to pay for Dr. Jekyll.
You know, Thomas, why don't we stop on the way home and get you another jacket?
Thomas laughs and hops into the driver's seat.
A pleasure seeing you again, Thomas.
Thank you, miss. Always an honor, miss.
Muriel turns and places her hand on the windowsill of the carriage and continues turning toward the front door of the mansion slowly, allowing her hand to move slowly along the sill. Henry's hand meets hers gently and moves along with her. Her hand drops from the sill as she turns her body and begins to walk toward the house without saying another word to Henry.
Ready, sir?
At your will, Thomas. Better to get home quick and get you warm.
Thomas chuckles again and reins the horses to movement. Cut to Henry asleep on a black background. His face is calm. Jump cut to Henry and Muriel picnicking in the park. They eat, laugh, and look lovingly into each other's eyes while they talk. Back to Henry sleeping. Jump cut to Henry proposing to Muriel and she kisses him. Back to Henry sleeping. Jump cut to Henry and Hasty arguing in the laboratory. Hasty leaves the lab and slams the door shut behind him. Back to Henry sleeping and his face contorts a bit from the growing nightmare. Jump cut to multiple newspapers being dropped on a lab table. Headlines all read messages of theft and fraud for Henry. Back to Henry stirring. Jump cut to Henry sitting at a table with Muriel at a fancy party. Baron SAVILE offers his hand to Muriel without a word. Muriel looks at Henry and then takes SAVILE's hand. Muriel and SAVILE begin to dance while Henry looks on. SAVILE's hand slowly starts to lower from Muriel's back to getting closer to her buttocks. SAVILE has a look of hatred on his face. Back to Henry stirring. Jump cut to the party and Henry is on top of SAVILE punching him wildly. Jump cut to a silhouette of Mr. Hyde roaring in rage, and his large frame is taut and flexed while roaring toward the sky, but in the monstrous roar you hear something, "Free me!" Back to Henry's eyes shoot open in shock. Cut to Interior Oxford Science Department Laboratory and Office of Henry JEKYLL and Hasty LANYON, early morning. Henry sits at the lab table looking into the microscope. He hears footsteps walking the hall toward the door. He quickly lifts his head from the microscope and looks to the door. The footsteps walk by the doors and continue down the hallway. Henry is dismayed. He shudders a bit as he bends to look back into the microscope. He looks into the microscope for a moment and then looks back to the door. After a moment, he looks away from the door and picks up his pen to write in his notebook. He begins to write and then tosses down his pen in frustration. Dissolve to an overview of the office. Henry begins to fade in and out as he is completing tasks to show a time lapse. Through the time lapse, sporadically cut to scenes of Henry looking up at the door. Back to Henry in the office at his desk as he looks up at the door. No one enters. He drops his notebook on the desk. Cut to Interior East End Clinic day. Muriel enters the back area of the clinic and begins preparing herself for her shift. As she is putting on her apron, she notices a bouquet of flowers sitting on one of the desks. She approaches them and looks around. She removes the card from the bouquet and reads,
My dearest Muriel, I have seen the most beautiful flowers, but they pale in comparison to the beauty of your eyes. Their petals smell sweet, but would suffocate compared to the smell of your perfume. Flowers mean the world to some, but they are meaningless to me as long as I have you. With love, Henry.
Muriel holds the card to her heart and closes her eyes momentarily. She places the card back on the flowers and smells them deeply. Cut to exterior cafe down from the university, day. Henry sits on the bench outside of the cafe. He does not have his notebook. He is merely staring out into the street. He is there for a few moments and Gabriel approaches.
You look like shit.
Henry hangs his head for a moment and then lifts it back up. Gabriel sits down on the bench next to Henry and stares into the street as well. They speak without looking at each other. Gabriel never speaks gravely. He could as easily be discussing his morning breakfast.
He told you.
He had to. He wanted to make sure that there was no way for the university to come after him legally if this were to get out.
Should I get a lawyer?
You mean someone better than me? Possible. Cheaper, perhaps. Never better.
You know, I really did feel it was the lesser of two evils. I did it to protect him.
Perhaps it was. Not going to make him feel better, but that's his problem.
I should never have brought him into this.
Why did you?
Because he was the most gifted chemist I know.
Did you ever weigh the possibility that this could happen?
Yes.
Well, then there you go. You knew the possibilities and you acted. No one can ask for more than that.
And I have lost one of my best friends in the process.
Oh, piss. He'll straighten his undergarments and move on. He's just taking a minute because he likes the way it feels.
Being lied to?
No, twisted panties.
I don't know what I'm doing anymore, Gabriel.
Henry, did you think saving the world was going to be easy? No reason for you to go making it harder. Do you still believe in this soul business?
Henry is silent for a moment, not because of his deciding, but in contemplation for all that it has cost him.
I do.
Then figure it out. You're the smartest man I know. If you can't figure it out, then it really must be bollocks.
But it's not that simple. Without Hasty, I don't know if I could ever go the distance needed.
Then get him back in there. This isn't the first time you've gone to the rugs. You remember in year 5?
Do you recognize this carriage? I have never seen it here before.
Actually, sir, I do. It was at the party of Miss CAREW last night, and the same man stood outside next to it all night. He never joined the drivers or anything, just stood there staring at the house. I believe the carriage belongs to that baron in the funny-looking tuxedo, sir. None of the drivers knew his name.
Oh, God, I must get inside, Thomas. Take the carriage and go home. I will have Muriel drop me at the university this evening and call if I plan to return home.
Oh, I don't mind waiting, sir. It's no trouble.
You and I both know that Muriel will have my head if she saw you sitting out here, so go home and help Mrs. Billingsley prepare supper.
As you wish. Good afternoon, sir.
Henry has already started moving toward the clinic entry. Cut to interior, East End Clinic, afternoon. Henry rushes into the clinic but does not see Muriel. He hurries to another area marked supplies on the door, but sees no one. He rushes to the back offices and stops at the doorway. He hears Muriel's voice talking to someone. He takes a moment to compose himself and then speaks as he walks into the doorway.
Muriel, can you help me with a patient?
He sees Muriel with a couple of files on one of the desks. Some papers have been pulled out of them. SAVILE stands over her, too closely for Henry's comfort. An expression of discomfort is on her face as well, but quickly turns to relief.
Henry, thank God.
She realizes her slip and quickly regains her composure. SAVILE becomes agitated by Henry's sudden presence.
Thank God you are here. There is a patient that is in dire need of your help. Lord SAVILE has been attempting to learn more about our work here and insisted I show him our records to see if he can provide any assistance in funding.
That is very kind of you, my lord.
Yes, well, anything I can do to help.
I'm sure the citizens of East End will be most grateful. There are local food repositories for the needy that would benefit greatly from your generosity as well. I would be happy to show you some of the more dire locations.
Perhaps another time. Miss CAREW is just showing me a few details here. If you don't mind leaving us to work, I am sure another volunteer can assist you. SAVILE drops his sight back to the paperwork, dismissing Henry. Muriel's face pleads with Henry not to leave her alone. He winks at her and gives her a very slight smile.
I am dreadfully sorry, my lord, but this patient is of particular difficulty, and Muriel has been caring for the man for quite some time. She's the only one who can... Amazing. Love you. Just...
I swear this place will...
I fear that there are difficult times ahead in my research.
Don't worry, my love. You were born to overcome.
Henry smiles while still looking at the window, but he places his hand on top of hers. The carriage slows and comes to a stop in front of the university. Muriel straightens back up, but does not let go of Henry's hand. The carriage doors open.
Please, do not work too late.
She kisses his hand and releases him. He reaches over and kisses her forehead, then exits the carriage. The door closes and he looks back in the window.
Give everyone my best and dream sweetly of the future. Good night, my love.
Good night, sweet doctor.
Henry stands back and the carriage pulls away. Henry looks to the large building. He takes a deep breath and lets out a sigh. Cut to Interior Oxford Science Department Laboratory and Office of Henry JEKYLL and HASTIE LANYON, evening. Henry enters the office and looks around. Nothing has changed, but HASTIE is not there. A look of disappointment spreads on Henry's face. He walks over to HASTIE's desk and picks up his notebook. He does not open it. He just bends it and feels the leather. He places it back on the desk and moves toward the desk. He sits on the chair and begins to study his notes from his notebook. Dissolve 2, an overview of the office. Henry begins to fade in and out as he completes tasks around the lab to show a time lapse. Cut to Henry sitting at the lab table in front of the chemistry set. He takes a beaker and moves toward the microscope. He sits in front of the microscope and places a fresh slide from the box underneath. He removes a syringe from the compound from the beaker and takes a deep breath.
Please.
Henry injects the syringe into the slide and looks through the microscope. Cut to a view of blood cells is seen through the microscope, but another particle is present and begins to absorb the blood cells. You can hear Henry's breath catch in anticipation. After a moment, the cell begins to discolor and separate again.
Ugh.
Cut to Henry pulls away from the microscope with a flustered exhale. His face contorts in anger. He picks up the beaker and throws it against the wall and screams in anger. Henry looks defeated and sits back down in front of the microscope. Cut to interior, Oxford Science Department laboratory and office of Henry JEKYLL and HASTIE LANYON, late night. The room is dimly lit from only 2 candles, one sitting on the shelf above Henry's desk, the other sitting next to the microscope on the lab table. He sits at the lab table, staring at the microscope for a moment, and then speaks.
I know you're in there. Show yourself.
He stares a moment longer, then looks into the microscope. Cut to a view of blood cells is seen through the microscope.
Where does the soul of a man truly lie? Is it in his love? Is it in his will to do what is good and just? Is it simply in his imagination? Or is it in his very blood? Where does the soul of a man truly lie, and what evils can be vanquished if we were to find it? What soul can be wiped clean of sin? I know you are there.
Back to Henry still looking in the microscope. HASTIE enters the office. Henry sits up slowly, away from the microscope, and stares at it mournfully. HASTIE moves to turn on the light.
Please don't.
HASTIE moves from the light and moves towards his desk.
I enjoy the candlelight. It's simple. It's calming.
It's fine. I just came to collect my things.
Henry says nothing. He continues to stare at the microscope.
I should have known you would still be here. It will hurt your eyes sitting in the dark. I am going to turn on the lights.
HASTIE wets his finger with his tongue and puts out the candle above Henry's desk. He begins to move toward the light switch.
You know, it's funny. I've never really thought about it.
HASTIE stops before turning on the light. He turns back to Henry.
About what?
Henry glides his finger over the flames of the candle that sit next to the microscope.
How akin fire is to man.
Henry, are you all right?
Cut to close-up of flames as it dances.
There is such a small turn between the loving, calming warmth of a flame and the burning, angry, unstoppable fire. Such a small, soothing thing that holds such immense power if harnessed correctly.
Henry closes his eyes. A moment of melancholy has taken hold.
You know, Henry, the entire time we've been working on this exploration of yours, there's one question I never asked. I never thought I had to. Why, Henry? Why is this so important to you? Was it really worth risking everything, your career, your reputation, your friends, even Muriel? Why is this more important than everything else?
Henry is silent. HASTIE begins to think he will not answer and starts to turn towards his desk.
Do you think me a good man, HASTIE?
Until last night, you never gave me a moment to question otherwise.
I've never felt like one. Since the youngest age I can remember, I've always tried to be the best man I could. I helped others in need. I obeyed the path I believe God put in front of me. I've always tried to recognize the best in man, but my demon remains constantly in my dreams, torturing me and revealing the man I truly am, fraught with doubt, jealousy, hatred, and every other sin that has plagued man since our creation.
That is only human, Henry.
Well, precisely. I am no better than any man out there, and I have seen the ugliness that man possesses. I've seen wars that have twisted men's souls to nothing. I've seen men step over their brothers in their streets instead of helping them to their feet. I've seen the worst of men, and I cannot believe that is what God has intended for us. I do not revel in the pain I have caused you, my friend. That sin will weigh more heavily on me than I can say, but my mind, my body, and my soul are in constant odds between the man I wish to be and the darkness that longs to be free. I know there is a way to rid myself of this darkness, for if there is not, I am lost. And if I have to burn it away with the flame of this candle or the fires of hell, I will do so, wishing the scars do not spread to those I love.
But when your blood burns, Henry, so shall the blood of everyone that loves you.
Then perhaps it is best if you do leave, my friend. You do not deserve the position I have thrust upon you.
Hasty begins to turn toward the light switch, but stops.
Henry.
Hasty moves slowly away from the light switch without turning on the lights. Henry shakes his head slowly, trying to rid himself of the depression he is in.
I'll be fine, Hasty. Maybe you were right.
No, Henry. I think I may have been quite wrong.
No. I was wrong, my friend. I should have told you about the research proposal. It was wrong to keep it from you. I just believed in this so much, and our resources would not have been enough.
Henry, no. I believe I may owe you an apology. In my cynicism of your theory, I missed something.
Oh, Hasty, you have never turned your back on me. Even when you didn't believe, you never quit. You are a true friend, and I betrayed your trust.
Henry, is your genius too much for even yourself to understand? Fire and man, Henry. We have used every logical and illogical composition to find your reaction, but maybe that is the only first piece of this particular puzzle. We must let fire do the rest.
Henry sits momentarily confused in his melancholy state. He looks back up to the flame. A realization spreads across his face.
My God.
Henry sits looking at the flame for a moment. Then he stands and moves towards Hasty quickly. Henry hugs him with a large pat on the back. They separate.
I'm glad you take such detailed notes. We will need them to reconstruct each experiment with varying degrees of heat fluctuation.
Hasty, could this be it?
Henry, I still don't want to get your hopes too high. This is still a very improbable task.
But not impossible.
No, my friend. I dare say not impossible. If the soul is there, I believe we will find it.
Then let's begin.
Henry pinches out the flame of the candle, leaving darkness. Fade out credits. Great. Yay.
Clapping.
Nice.
Applause, applause.
Applause, applause.
Meg, you get the award for the best postscript dance.
Do my best.
The best voice. You have an incredible voice, Meg.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
So I think we're at about an hour and a half. So out of respect for everybody's time, if you need to drop out, feel free to exit. Just make sure that you say goodbye to us. We had, on the logistical side of the fence, we had some technical difficulties with our live stream. So we're recording, but we'll get it up and I'll share that link with all of you. But for those of you who want to stay for a few minutes and give Sean some feedback, I think that's more than welcome.
And Ben, I just want to clarify, we are live, so do you want me to keep on streaming here or shut it off?
Dude, I obey you, Todd. You tell me what to do. I'm the cog in your system.
Well, just a clarification for all the lovely actors on the line to keep it PG-13 or R maximum, because we still are live. And we should open it up to questions for the audience.
That means me.
Well.
I think that just means
and most often me.
No cussing.
There was, can I just say that there were a couple of words, I think it's around the 40s, that were that totally hit me really hard. I mean, they're words I hear every day, but I went, what? So in old England, I'm not sure if they used them, but they obviously did. But the script changed from that flow into a couple of cuss words and then went back into the good flow again. It was just an interesting page, that one.
Are you trying to say they didn't say fuck back in old England?
Wait, we just agreed to do PC. What are you talking
I know.
I was being politically correct.
Are we doing feedback live with everybody listening in on this, or are we doing it separately with Sean, or what do you think?
Well, I think Sean is, you know what? This is an open forum. Sean, do you want us to stop the cut and then give feedback privately?
No, buddy. Keep it
I have
on.
no shame.
Yeah, maybe there's another aspiring writer out there that can learn from your notes as well. So absolutely, keep it going. Anybody that's still interested and still watching.
When you hit your mute button, it's a very good idea to hit it before you speak. You come back on. So I'm looking, going, what's going on here? That was me.
It was interesting that there was multiple dimensions. In general, you had different voices and everything.
Yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? Yeah, very strange. Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna jump. I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
I will say this, Sean. Like, as somebody who leads their life, you know, trying to be as best as a human as I can be, but also understanding that there's this, you know, side of me that it, you know, can be vindictive, can be manipulative, and living, especially as becoming an older gentleman. I really love how you tapped into that, you know, and it wasn't like, I'm going to beat you over the head with duality. Am I a good man or am I an evil man? It was done subtly enough that I felt the connection. I didn't have to be like, oh, he's teaching me that there's a duality in my soul. It made me just fit right into that conflict that I have as a human being. So well done on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could add to that too, Sean. Yeah, I felt, particularly towards the end when we were exploring that, I could relate to the words and what he's trying to identify and just examine and either remove it from his conscious or improve it. I mean, I felt all of his conflict and struggle in that whole thing. You know, I'm struggling myself, you know, but I'm not going to show it today because that'd be too much for the audience and probably need some psychological therapy, but we're going to save that for another time. Yeah, but that's good work. I mean, I enjoyed reading the script. I had fun reading it to begin with. So all the nuances in terms of what people are going through, I felt like you really were able to dig into that, and the very end just sums everybody up, just as even the first episode. So hats off to you, brother.
Yeah, I think you were incredibly successful in showing Hyde's sort of motivations from a very fresh angle. I thought that was really unique, and overall I felt like I've done many readings and many pilots, and this felt like an easy read. It felt like it was very, it was easy to grasp, and I got the different characters and so forth. I mean, if you're ever going to send this out to anybody in terms of like getting funding for it or whatever, you would really just need to go in and clean up all the micromanaging of scenes, because there's just a lot of verbiage in there that you don't need. Okay. Simplify in the action descriptions, and particularly there was a lot of chuckles, and I just in the notion of the chuckles, I think you have an opportunity to really separate the three men in terms of how potentially they talk about women, for instance, to show how they're different. Right now they're all talking about women in a similar way, and it's all this and that, and I think there's just ways of giving each of those guys something very different, and you can probably put that onto Muriel as well. I think you have an opportunity to make her, you know, more, not sort of feisty is the wrong word, but just make her a little more sort of less sort of trope of a woman of the time. Like I feel like there are hints of it in there. I think you could embrace it even more, that maybe she has the power over Henry completely, and she actually uses it in a very specific way, even with the Baron maybe, or to just play around more with her motivations and what kind of character she is, as opposed to, you want subtext, right? You want as much subtext as possible. And I feel like some of your characters are not written with subtext in mind. So I think, keep in mind, people say one thing and they may feel something very differently. And I think if you can figure that out with the 3 male characters that we hear throughout the script, and with Muriel in particular, I think you'd be in great shape.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I really enjoyed reading the script, and I felt it was easy for me to visualize. Like I was really brought into the world.
Mm.
And I thought some of the characters seemed very clear to me. I understood who they were, and I would agree with Lukas with these 3 friends that have this history together. There is going to be a language that they share, and particularly they seem to share this idea of their female conquests. But particularly with Henry, he seems to have really taken a different direction from his 2 friends in that regard. So I think there are opportunities to help us see the 3 men that they have become, as opposed to the boys that they all were together. Now they're 3 individuals who are going in very different directions, it seems. But yeah, there could be a bit more clarity there.
Thank you.
Did you have a repeat of the dream sequence where Hyde is pummeling somebody twice? It feels like it was a repeat.
It was a repeat of action, but in the first dream sequence, it was just an unknown man. Yeah. In the second one, it was the same format, but it was actually SAVILE in his place, so it gave a face to that threat.
Okay. Okay.
Well, if I could say something kind of jumping off of what Meg said, the Hyde character being possessed with jealousy and rage and things like that, versus JEKYLL and his buddies talking about girls and women. I thought that was interesting because it kind of demystifies and desensationalizes sexual conquests, and it really makes me wonder, is JEKYLL what is the worst thing about him? And it's probably not a one-night stand. It's probably something that he feels a lot more shame about than just a fleeting sexual relationship or something. So I'm curious about that.
Can you explain, Sean, the actual what you're going for with the division of the blood? What is it that we're waiting for to happen?
So the division of the blood, in each shot where it talks about how the compound begins to mold with the blood, but then all of a sudden it blackens and separates. They're looking for a 100% absorption of the blood from the molecule, and then eventually that's going to help separate what they need. And then at the end, with that heat factor that they identified, that's what's going to help them down the line to get that compound at the exact point that they need it.
See, I think if you can verbalize that in a shorter, concise, more chewable version and put it up early in the script, every time Hyde puts his eye to that microscope, we're going to know exactly what it is he's hoping will happen.
Okay.
So that it leads up to that moment when oh, fire is going to do it. Let's see if it happens this way. But right now, I get a sense, okay, so that wasn't what he wanted, but I'm not sure exactly what it is I'm waiting to happen.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm taking notes, so I hope you guys don't think that I'm not looking at the screen. It's because I'm writing it down so that I don't forget anything.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if Muriel asked JEKYLL if he was still a boy or one of the boys. Are you still one of the boys, or are you a man? because I think that's an important question for her to know, and it's probably an important question for JEKYLL to know as well. For her to put that to him would be rather a good piece of drama, I thought.
Yeah, I definitely feel there's something about the women are written a little old-fashioned. I guess it's maybe appropriate for the time that they might have been naive, so to speak. And I just feel like if you're going to do this today, you're really going to have to infuse the women with a little more savvy.
And her father, her father's a general, so I'm sure she is used to not mincing her words.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
To that point, and I feel like I'm gonna screw this up. There's my disclaimer, how I'm about to talk. So my mother-in-law is full Pakistani. My wife is half Pakistani, right? And we often think of Middle Eastern cultures as, you know, the females in that culture are out of the spotlight. I think that's the best way I could say it right now. We think that they're a very male-dominated culture. But
sorry,
yeah, you should be laughing. But when you, my theory, because I don't live in that culture, but I know I know a few of these women. I'm married to one of them, where you get behind those closed doors, like these women fucking rule the house. Oh, sorry, PG. They rule
again. That's true. That's
exactly. Yes. Yes.
Don't worry, guys. I'll get him a jar.
Yeah, I'll get a jar.
I'll put
It'll fund the movie by the end of fund the show by the time.
My show, I can cuss if I want.
I don't know if it's not just a Middle Eastern trait. I think it's a general trait, except for a certain type of man who, you know, maybe is abusive or something. But I think women generally control the house and the husband. I mean, that the man is the man is the head of the household, but the woman turns the neck.
The man wears the pants, but she chooses the pair.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I don't see, you know, I don't know. I'm not a misogynist, but I don't see many households where the man is that overbearing, tough, like misogynist who you know, overcomes or dictates.
But to your point, Paul, to everybody's point, which is like, I shouldn't even be speaking. I know I'm going to screw this up, but there is a power. All women have a power that is equal to men, if not more powerful. But they're just they're so complicated and sophisticated about how they use their power. And to all this point, I would like to just see a little bit more Muriel about that. Like,
yeah, well, and
she's the chess maneuver here, right? Like,
she's close. I mean, Muriel's close, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's close. Yeah, she's closer than the others. Yeah.
Yeah.
So close.
Unfortunately, you know, the group didn't get to hear what I was talking to Eryn about earlier when we were talking about Muriel, because that's, and I think it shows more in later episodes, which is unfortunate because that means that I now need to go and make sure that that is very apparent up front as well. Muriel is, in my opinion, and I think the way that I wrote her is the strongest character in the entire show. And a lot of the points that you guys have made, I almost want to send you guys all of the episodes that I've written just so that you can see how spot on you are. And I absolutely love that it's come across that way. And that's the way I tried to explain it to Eryn, is that she is the most she's the most non-conflicted person in the entire show. She has that strength of knowledge of herself, and really begins to show it as the arc continues. And that's why I told Eryn up front, you know, she's unforgiving. She's, you know, very passionate, you know, especially when I was talking about the scene in the clinic. You know, she is very passionate about people. She's very headstrong about, you know, she'll take these damn doctors on herself if she has to make sure that everybody is getting the same level of care that they deserve. So it's definitely a character that is, to your guys' point, immensely strong, and
Well,
really rivals for power is Hyde himself.
Well, so this is my question to you then. Is that me? Is that me making that noise? I just heard like a weird noise.
Yeah, I heard that.
To that point though, then the juxtaposition of that is you have to figure out what her flaw is. What is her weakness, right? Because otherwise she'll become one note. So it's all good and well that she's a strong woman, but what is it that she fears, or what is it that she can't have that she wants? And that'll give her that layer that I think we're talking about. You just need to figure out, like, what is it that she's not strong about, or that you can't get, or you have to look at that for her as well. She can't just be this perfect, beautiful woman who's eager to take on Hyde and knows herself really well. There has to be something.
Why not? That makes my heart melt to think of someone like that.
I know, but who is that way though?
No, it's absolutely a great point, Lucas.
All right,
that's the side that I need to explore. Yeah. I think I've tried to, every time I think of her, I try to keep those two things in mind. Is she is emphatically in love with JEKYLL, but that can't affect her need to be the best for everybody else around her. Those are the two things that I keep in mind every time that I write her. So to your point, that's great when you're writing an angel, but I need to put some of the demon into her as well to see where her flaw is. And that's exactly right. That's an absolutely amazing call out, because it honestly, it's the one thing that I never even considered with her, because I always just wrote her as, this is the pinnacle of the show. Like, as I said, she is who everybody tries to be.
Then it's even more important that you figure out what her.
Absolutely. No, it's an amazing call out.
The final thing I'll say, and then I'll shut my mouth and let other people talk, is that the one thing I feel your pilot needs that it doesn't have right now is urgency. It feels a lot like we could have endless scenes of this and they could discuss a little bit longer, and the fact that money is not really a problem. It's such an easy thing to up the stakes by the fact that the money is not coming in, and maybe they do need Baron. Just in ways of having people lean into this a little bit more. You have to, I think, you have to up the obstacles and figure out that there's a time frame before the university is going to pull that money out. He doesn't have years and years and years of sitting looking into his microscope, which it feels a little bit like right now. So I would figure out an artificial urgency, an artificial cutoff point that ups everybody's tensions. And the fact that if the money goes, is the Baron an option, despite the fact that he's hitting on his girl? And it's just, those complications is gold. And I think if you can really hone that in your pilot, it'll just fly faster, which is what you need in a pilot, I think.
No, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, I know exactly what to do. And it's going to be...
yeah, it's right there. It's right there.
I'm going to send it to you after I'm done. It's perfect. You just... I have a whole storyline built in my head now, and I was like, thank you. That's what I needed.
Cool. All right. Hey, guys, I got to go. So it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been great working with you.
Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy. I think I'll just hit this button then. Oh, leave. It says down here, leave.
You want me to boot you?
This is that moment where the awkward leave moment where you're waiting for Zoom to shut you out.
Right.
I think that's the interesting thing about this process too, to people that are not used to seeing table reads and things like that, is like there's just so much to be learned from notes and reading through things and like, wow, that worked, that didn't work, and other things that you might, I mean, as far as a writer, I just think that table reads are such an important part of the puzzle, as boring as they may be for other people to watch.
I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, but no, I mean, one of the to your point, and one of the great things that I've learned today is the pilot is obviously an introduction to this world and to these characters, but at the same time, it's also the introduction to the audience. And that's something that, you know, I really look forward to introducing them to this new feel of these very well-known characters. But to all of your guys' point, being able to grab them and show them why this is something that they're going to want to continue to visit every day, every week, is something that has to be very apparent in these first 60 pages. And that, so taking some of the things that are in some of those later episodes and giving them that urgency, you know, to Lukas's point, and putting them right up front is very necessary. And it's something that I look forward to doing. I'm very excited about it.
All right, it's very late for me here in New York, so I'm gonna check out. It's my mic that's weird, sorry. It's been a pleasure. Lovely to meet you all. Good to see you again, Aaron.
Take care.
Thank you very
Congrats,
much.
Sean. Great work. Seriously,
Thank
great
you
work.
very much for your read. Thank you.
All good. Good night.
Take care.
Love you. I'm just gonna, I'll say one last thing too, and this is kind of formulating through everybody's input, which is, I think the Baron, nice job, Weetus and the Baron.
To have to switch back and forth. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
I do feel like, and by the way, the guy that just left has taught me pretty much half I know on screenwriting.
Mhm.
This guy, Lukas, has been a mentor to me on many fronts, but I think this Baron character is you're missing, not missing puzzle piece, but there's so much more there, right? And based upon everything that we've talked about right now, Muriel and JEKYLL, you know, he's like this obstacle, and they're like, oh, look at the douchebag, help me with the douchebag. But to everybody's point, if the money's running out and JEKYLL needs to consider him as an advocate or a resource to get that money, he has to treat him a little bit differently. And to the point of Muriel, where if there's a little bit of a demon in her and maybe she's got some insecurity with the fact that JEKYLL loves his work more than her, she might be pumping up the heat with the Baron just to kind of see how JEKYLL reacts to the affection. So you've got this, and I'm just throwing these out as examples. I don't know if they're on or not, but the point is the Baron could be a focal point to all the insecurities and the duality and the obstacles. So that's something to explore, I would recommend.
Well, and that's something that I was getting out of the two dream sequences, is, you know, how much is Muriel choosing to walk away with this other person? How much is she doing this to JEKYLL? You know, there, like, I just had those thoughts in my mind, as much as, you know, he's being tormented with what he's seeing the man doing. What is her position in it? How much is she making a choice to walk away with him? And how much is that because of JEKYLL? Like, as I was looking at the dream sequences, I was like, is this, like, are we seeing what's gonna happen? And how much at that point has Muriel already decided, like, I can't have a life with you, so I'm gonna go over to this guy because that just seems like a better choice for me in my life. So yeah, I do think that there's a lot of opportunity with those characters.
Great. Thank you, Meg.
Oh,
It's
Ben,
getting late,
you're
so
done.
final round of thoughts.
Well, Ben,
Round
Ben,
of thoughts.
what do we have to remind our viewers about for our final thoughts? What's that thing each week
God's
that they
been
should
training
do?
me. Like and subscribe. baby.
Yes, that's right. Like and subscribe.
We can be taught.
Oh,
And
we're doing
is
this
there
to
anything
build
coming up
time.
soon? Why did we do all this?
I think this is a demonstration of all the glory that you're going to get at the Seattle Film Summit coming in 1 month.
Awesome.
Anything else, Todd? Todd's my favorite.
Maybe some of these actors will be
Thank
there
you,
at the
Todd.
Actors Showcase, right? Or you can apply at seattlefilmsummit.com/filmmaker showcase submission page.
There you go. And we
Right.
should cast right now. You guys want to be actors?
Yeah.
Table reads at the summit?
Sure.
Hey, look at that. We just cast 5 people. You got
Done.
half the job's done. Any final thoughts?
I know that I said it up front, but I'm going to say it again. Just thank you to each one of you. I was so blown away to hear the words kind of spoken out loud for the first time, when it wasn't just me sitting in front of my computer making sure that they made sense in my head. So yeah, to hear them spoken out loud, I can't describe the feeling. And just thank you guys for the passion you put into each line, and every note that you had. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
I can attest to, I was watching Sean every time a character spoke for the first time. I'd be watching Sean, and he had this look. It was a shit-eating grin. Like, I can't let everybody see.
I saw that too. It was awesome.
So that was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you so much. I love you all.
Yeah, I loved it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
guys.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good one.
Good night.
Everybody
Keep
have a good
making
night.
stuff, everybody.
Right on.
Thank you, Sean.